Okay, so we are recording and live, and I just wanted to thank everyone for being here for She Talks Law, our May edition of She Talks Law, where we're going to be discussing what you can do to protect your business. And we're going to be talking about it from a few different angles and standpoints today. I'm going to start out and talk about a few developments. Most recently, the New York HERO Act that came out in beginning of May, which applies to all private employers regardless of size. And then I'm going to turn the court over to Dorothy Hill, who is on the call, and she's going to be talking about cybersecurity and data and privacy concerns for your businesses also and for your personal lives as well. And then finally, we're going to turn it over to Austin Judkins, who is an associate in our corporate department. And he's going to talk about protecting your business from a liability standpoint. And by doing that, the way that he's going to do that is explaining the best corporate structure, the different corporate structures that are available, and what might be best to protect you from a liability standpoint. If we do not have time to get to all of Austin, then I will push it to June. But I just wanted to give you that heads up that that is what is on the agenda. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Alrighty, so I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see this PowerPoint right here? Give me a thumbs up if you can. You're good? Okay, wonderful. All right. Okay, so I already did the introduction and gave you a little bit of a roadmap. Like I said, I'm going to discuss the HERO Act first. I was going to get into vaccinated versus unvaccinated patrons and clients, since that has been a hot topic. But for time's sake today, I'd like to get to Dorothy Hill first. And if you have questions about vaccinated patrons, clients, employees, let's save that for the Q&A at the end, okay? So let's talk about the law, the New York HERO Act. On May 5th of just this month, earlier this month, Andrew Cuomo signed the New York Health and Essential Rights Act, the New York HERO Act, which mandates extensive new workplace health and safety protections in response to the pandemic. Now, I want to clarify that these new health and safety protections and requirements are for all airborne infectious diseases, not just COVID. Okay, there are two main sections that I want you to be aware of when you're thinking of the New York HERO Act. The first section, it requires all private employers to draft and implement an airborne infectious disease exposure prevention standard no later than June 4th. Yes, you read that right. No later than June 4th. That's next Friday. So no pressure, but I will let you know that there are some proposed amendments out there, and I'll cover the amendments at the end, which would extend that deadline. But let me get into a little bit more about what this airborne infectious disease prevention standard is supposed to look like. Okay, so first of all, the act set forth a requirement that the Commissioner of the Department of Labor needs to release a model standard that employers can either adopt, or they can use that model standard, tailor it to their specific business. And as long as it's not less restrictive than that model standard and still it falls within the requirements of the act, then that's okay too. But I highly recommend you consult with your attorney to make sure whatever standard you end up adopting first of all, meets all of the requirements that are in the act, because there's a number of them. And second, that if you are going to tailor it to your business, that it meets all of those standards and that you are not, falling short from anything from that model standard. Okay. Some of the things that the model standard is going to address include health screenings, face coverings, PPE, hand hygiene, cleaning and disinfecting stations in your workplace, and common use services, and social distancing. So obviously what a sanitizing station looks like in one workplace is going to look a lot different for Kelly Wright at Golden Hello when she only has, a couple employees. So really it's going to be it's going to be different for a number of employers. And that's why I encourage you, once the model standard is released, to really take a look at it, consider it for your own business, and then have your attorney take a second look just to make sure that anything you change around, you're still in line with the act. Okay. If you have employees who are members of unions, that is an exception to this. The employer and the collective bargaining agreement representative must develop this plan in tangent, and that plan can be waived in the CBA, in the collective bargaining agreement. But again, most people that are on this call and that will be listening to it later on YouTube will not fall in that purview. So the new standard has to be included in a handbook if you have an employer handbook, or it has to be distributed to your employees as of the effective date, which again, the effective date is next Friday. The other times when this new airborne infectious disease exposure prevention plan, it is a mouthful, by the way. The other times that it has to be distributed is upon new hire. So anytime you hire somebody new, and upon reopening after a period of closure due to an airborne infectious disease. How long of a closure, what type of disease, if there's just one person out because of an airborne infectious disease versus everyone, the act is unclear, as much of New York's legislation is. However, as we sort of get into the groove of seeing how this act is going to play out, there will be further guidance I anticipate being released. And so we can get a little bit more clarification on that. The other important piece to note for employers is that this infectious disease plan needs to be posted in a conspicuous location in your work site. So there are a number of labor posters that are required to be posted in your workplace. And this is just going to be another one of those things that needs to be posted. Okay, like I said, there are two sections. Section 1 is the plan. Section 2 is a workplace health and safety committee. So it's important to note the difference between these two is that the second one only applies if you are an employer with more than 10 or more employees. Okay. So this workplace health and safety committee, for those individuals that have 10 or more employees, it requires all private employers not to require a committee, but to allow employees to establish this joint employer-employee workplace health and safety committee. And this is a space where employees can raise health and safety issues and evaluate workplace health and safety policies. This doesn't take effect until November 1st, so we got some time, but I don't want you to put it on the back burner completely. I want you to really keep it at your forefront and think about how you're going to have this conversation with your employees to let them know that it is an option if they want it. 2/3 of the committee must be comprised of non-supervisory employees. So if you thought you were just going to pass it down to your managers, think again. It's got to be employees that are non-supervisory, non-leadership. Non-supervisory employees also are going to be the ones who select members of this committee. So it might be their friends, it might be, it might be managers, it might be you as the owner, you don't know, but it is up to them. And again, if there's a collective bargaining agreement in place, that's going to be separate. The collective bargaining agreement rep has to be responsible for selecting the employees to serve on this committee. For everybody else, members are going to be allowed, the act says this all, members are going to be allowed to attend a training. The training has to be on function of worker safety committees or rights established under the act or occupational safety and health. And that would be allowed without them suffering a loss of pay. So that would be one of the additional professional development items that you would have to allow by law for them to attend without suffering any sort of loss of pay. It's important to note for both Section 1 and Section 2 that there are anti-retaliatory provisions built into the act. So an employer cannot retaliate against an employee for saying that they want to participate on this workplace health and safety committee. Similarly, an employer cannot punish an employee for saying that they cannot do something work-related because they are attending a training that has to do with worker safety issues or occupational safety and health in conjunction with their participation on that committee. So they can't just say, I want to get out of this assignment or this task because I'm going on this training. Of course, they're going to have to figure out a way to work around it, but you can't punish them for participating in such a training. Another thing is you can't retaliate against an employee who raises any workplace health and safety concerns to you. So they're also protected, considered a protected class, just like, not formally like, someone with a disability or, gender, age, race, things of that nature. They're not one of the named protected classes, but there are anti-retaliation provisions built in that would protect employees in the event that they do raise concerns about health and safety issues that would violate your airborne infectious disease standards. Okay. So why listen to all of this? Why worry about next Friday or think about what you may need to contact your attorney and get them on board pretty quick? Why worry about any of this at all? Well, civil penalties. None of us like to hear that there will be penalties, and it's actually quite unclear the way the act is written when the commissioner is going to start really hampering down on some of these penalties. I don't anticipate that June 5th, if you don't have a plan in place, they're going to penalize you. But again, I don't know. I also anticipate that there may be some sort of notice and opportunity to cure, but again, that's not written in the statute, so it's not required. So what kind of civil penalties would you be looking at? Well, if you fail to just flat out do not adopt this airborne infectious disease prevention plan, you don't give it to your employees, you don't adopt it, nothing. It's not in your handbooks, nothing. Then you're looking at around $50 a day, which that can add up pretty quickly. If you do adopt a plan, but then you just fail to abide by it, you're looking at civil penalties ranging from $1,000 to $10,000, depending on severity. And that's in the discretion of the Commissioner of Labor. So down the road, let's say this plan has been in place for about 6 years. If the commissioner finds that you violated Section 1, and again, Section 1 is about creating that plan. If you violated it in the preceding 6 years, then you could be looking at an additional penalty of not less than $200 per day for failing to adopt this plan, or up to $20,000 for failure to abide by it. So it's almost like they're building in a warning into the act saying, listen, you got to be in compliance now. But if we find that 6 years down the road, you're still not compliant, you could be looking at additional civil penalties. In addition, injunctive relief, asking or telling the employer that they can and cannot do something, that's another remedy under the law. Continued, employees are granted a private right of action to bring a civil suit for injunctive relief, to tell the employer to stop something, to do something, to take some sort of action. And if they are successful in that civil suit, then they could be awarded reasonable attorney's fees. They could also ask for liquidated damages not to exceed $20,000. So again, and in summary, the penalties for retaliation against an employee who either brought up some sort of workplace health and safety issue regarding an airborne infectious disease, or they participated in one of the workplace health and safety committees and you took some sort of retaliatory action, demotion, terminating them, treating them differently than similarly situated employees, you could be looking at liquidated damages, costs and reasonable attorney's fees, reinstatement, and back pay. So just to let you know, it is very serious. It's something that I want you to keep at the forefront. You need to be aware of it. You need to implement it, and you need to ask your attorney or come to me if you have any questions about implementing it properly in your business. Also, if you're an employee and you're not the boss and you're aware of this, you need to tell your boss, listen, I'm aware of this. Do you know about this deadline? And if not, let's get you connected with Jen so that she can tell you more about this plan. It's really critical that businesses are aware of what is necessary when it comes to the HERO Act, especially with everything that's going on when masks are starting to be lifted. You know, we're segregating vaccinated versus non-vaccinated employees. It's very important, regardless of size, all employers by that June 4th deadline have to have this plan in place and in their work handbooks and distributed to their employees and posted somewhere. And again, November 1st, for employers with over 10 or more employees, you have to permit some sort of workplace health and safety committee. So it's not a mandate, it's just permissible at this point. I created this PowerPoint. This just goes to show you how quickly the law is changing. I created this PowerPoint 2 days ago. And since then, some proposed amendments have already come out, which I was not able to get into the PowerPoint in time. So I just wanted to alert you to some of these proposed amendments. I'll be posting more about it on social media, and I certainly can do an email blast once I get confirmation of what it's going to look like. But the proposed amendments would extend the deadline for the Department of Labor to create this model standard to July 5th. So that gives us a little bit of extra time. I will tell you right now, you guys are required, as of the way it's written right now, to have this model standard by next Friday. The Department of Labor has not released anything. So if you were going to go Google Department of Labor model standard for airborne infectious disease exposure prevention plan, that huge mouthful, you would come up with nothing, a lot of nothing right now, because the Department of Labor hasn't released a single thing about it. So in part, I think this proposed extension is just because Department of Labor is not really sure. I mean, they're required to have industry specific models. So maybe they needed more time to come up with these models. I don't know, but that could be something that is coming down the pipeline. Does that mean you sit and wait for June 3rd and just cross your fingers and hope that it gets extended? No, you need to act and make sure that you have your ducks in a row by June 4th. If it's extended to July, great. Then you're in a position to be ahead of the game. Okay. Another proposed amendment is that damages may be changing. So some of those civil penalties that I announced, and there may be some sort of statute of limitations for an employee's private right of action. Okay. And there also may be some additional limits on the training for those the Committee of Health and Safety, those employees that participated. There may be some limitations on the work hours, when they can attend, how much training they can attend. The amendments are limiting it to quarterly meetings during working hours to 2 hours, and the paid training to no more than 4 hours. So there will be additional guidance. Right now, we're just not really sure what that's going to look like, and I can certainly update you as we go. So anybody have any questions about the HERO Act? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So how do we know, I know there's got to be a cleaning station, but how do we know what to write up with no model to look at? I mean,
I know. And so what I'm going to recommend to most of my clients is that they adopt a policy that says, as of June 4th, 2021, I am implementing an airborne infectious disease exposure prevention plan that is to be determined by the Commissioner of Labor. Once the Commissioner of Labor then releases said plan, you can take a look at it and modify your policy, but at least you have something on paper that says, I'm following what they're saying, but until they come out with something, I can't really create anything. So I don't want you to create this plan and then have it be something that's just not usable. So I think one strategy that I do recommend is just to create that blanket statement And then that way later on, we can tailor it to your business.
Okay.
Any other questions? That was a good question. Other questions? Okay. Oh, Lauren, yes, go ahead.
So when you said it, like I have 3 employees and myself who I'm an employee of my company. So there's 4 of us.
Yes.
We go in people's homes and things. We don't have an actual brick and mortar. How does that affect me?
You still are going to need to come up with a plan. Your plan is going to look a lot different than someone that does have a brick and mortar. And so once that, like I said, what I recommend you do, similar to Kelly, is adopt that just very, very brief, vague statement of, as of June 4th, I am adopting the plan of whatever the Department of Labor comes out with. However, once they do release their model standards, we need to take a look at it and hone it into something that's going to be useful and applicable to you. Because that's going to look a lot different than someone that's running, let's say, like a restaurant or, a salon or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions. Anyone else? Okay. And you can email me if you have questions. I certainly am happy to take a look at your plans, make sure that they look good. The other thing is that a lot of people, I want to remind you, a lot of people have not updated their employee handbooks. The laws have been changing so frequently over the last year that it is absolutely critical that you are updating your handbooks, your policies and procedures. Even if you don't have a formal handbook, just your employment policies and procedures, it's really critical that you have modified them and tailored them to the state of the law, which is just constantly changing right now, especially when it comes to labor and employment. So I do offer a review of handbooks. So if that's something that you're interested in, please contact me, let me know. I'm happy to do that for you. Okay, and I do that for all sorts of employers. I do that for regular businesses. I do that for schools. I do it for real estate companies. So anyone that needs assistance with that, let me know. Okay, now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Dorothy Hill. Dorothy, would you like to go ahead and start sharing your screen? And while you're screen sharing, I will read your bio. She's muted right now. Dorothy.
Oh, thank you for unmuting me. Yes.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
I believe only one person can share at a time. So I believe you have to cede it to me so I can pop open my presentation.
I just selected that
Great.
you can share at the same time.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right. So let me introduce you, Dorothy, before you hop into it.
Sure.
She is a graduate of Dartmouth College with an MBA, double major in finance and technology from NYU Stern School of Business. She worked for the Council on Foreign Relations in the Economic Studies Department and Siemens Corporation. Her work experience also includes McKinsey & Company in Germany and the UK, and 6 years with Goldman Sachs in Germany, Japan, France, and the UK. From 2009 to 2013, she was managing director at Mid-Market Securities, member of FINRA, and held FINRA licenses series 7, 24, 63, and 79. Since 2014, she has worked as a consultant and advisor in compliance, including anti-money laundering, regulatory reporting, technology, training, and risk management. She is a national speaker on cybersecurity threats, public and private corruption investigations, and financial services, as well as technology regulations. She co-leads the podcast Her Community Too with Catherine Corella, having attained over 1 million subscribers in February of 2021 on Apple, Spotify, and other technology platforms. Dorothy is also a member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in Long Island. Thank you very much, Dorothy, and take it away.
Thank you for that nice welcome. And also thank you, Jen, for your presentation. And as you were talking about employee handbook, I thought this is a great foray into this particular topic because so many businesses, especially small and medium-sized businesses, they really struggle with a cybersecurity threat, how to prepare for it, how to hire the appropriate people for what's called advanced threats, and generally to ensure that their employees are up to speed on a very wide range of cybersecurity threats, not just here in the US, but around the globe. So what I'll do is I'll share each slide as we go. So the cybersecurity market is massive, truly. Expected to reach 232 billion. Again, this is on a global basis by next year. The global cybersecurity spend is also expected to exceed 1 trillion. And I'll just give you an example. So firms like JP Chase, they spend in the billions in terms of cybersecurity software, systems, training, hiring the appropriate people, hiring those who are well-versed in the regulatory compliance to file all the necessary reports, and then also an entire cadre of individuals around the globe to train, ultra high net worth clients, corporate clients, and other clients on cybersecurity risks and preparedness. What we're facing here in the US in particular is a massive cybersecurity job epidemic. We don't have enough people to fill the cybersecurity jobs. So those of you who have, children, grandchildren, friends, neighbors looking to go into a new career, I can highly recommend cybersecurity. And it really covers a wide range. It can be corporate, like working for a small business or medium-sized business. It could be working for a large bank, like the example I gave you for JP Chase. It could be working for the FBI, as long as they are under, the maximum age to enter the FBI program. It could be to work for a software company, a major company like IBM. So again, many employers hiring from threat detection to testing analysts, training, et cetera. There's a very important term that everyone should know called IAM, which is Identity and Access Management. There's a lot of really exciting technology going on in this space. For example, machine learning, a lot of forensic and analytical data that is used to help companies determine, is this really the person who's logging in as my client or my customer? Is this really the person that I'm sending or entity I'm sending the wire to? So again, identity and access management is critical. Some of the other terms you're going to hear within the cybersecurity realm, whether you're small, medium, or large business or government agency, will be blockchain, a technology that's been around for quite some time with ledger technology, but is taking on a new dimension as they trace assets. Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, with a very high percentage of cryptocurrency transactions used for nefarious, i.e. illegal purposes, criminal activity on the dark web. We'll get into that a little bit later. Artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, or RPA. Again, you'll hear a lot of these terms. Cybersecurity insurance is an extremely important topic, regardless of the company size. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a large global insurance company to provide. It could be a smaller local insurance company. So, just for the record, I gave a presentation to Principal in the Midwest a couple years ago before the pandemic. And there was such strong interest by senior executives, the board, and Principal's clients, because again, cybersecurity is one of the literally topics that keeps people awake at night, whether you're serving on a board or you own your own company. Where is that next threat coming from? So insurance is a way to mitigate that risk and also to ensure that you have conducted a thorough due diligence of all your systems, software, vendors, and the training that you give to your employees. Next is the field of regulatory compliance. If you're a small bank, for example, or you bank, your family banks, for example, a local credit union, that credit union is part of a larger association, whether it's out of DC or another association or regulator that goes through regular, or should be going through regular exams of cybersecurity preparedness across every type of financial institution, whether it's a broker-dealer, a bank, a credit union, or any other type of institution where you as a small or medium-sized business transact. And then finally, the cloud. Since March 2018, there have been many acts, including the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, that have been updated. And as Jen pointed out, the regulations and amendments, they evolve quite quickly. And I believe I've captured most of them, and I'll show you at the end of the slide some examples of the ones that you may hear, as you're having discussions with the vendor or company that you use to protect your employees' data as well as what you may use, in your home office to protect that as well. Let's take a quick look at the cybersecurity threat landscape. We've basically broken it down into 3 categories. You might recognize this photo on the top right is sort of Men in Black, but there are state actors. There are countries like China, Iran, others that have very well-trained individuals whose job it is to constantly attempt to hack into our US financial systems, our healthcare systems, our energy grid, and other major networks in the US. Those are the top 3 sectors identified by the US federal government as under threat by both people within the US and those outside the US. And it may not be a person, it may be a script or a program that's written that constantly attempts to break into a system. The next are globally organized cyber criminals. We hear about MS-13 here on Long Island and in the city in upstate New York, but it really goes beyond that to globally organized terrorist organizations that are on the radar of our federal, state, and local governments as being the sources of many of these cyber attacks. Finally, you have individuals, so sort of picture that young person, or regardless of age, sitting behind a laptop, constantly attempting to hack into a system. It's not just Hollywood where we see the portrayal of these types of criminals or felons, but it's truly, a growing risk. And you have more people sort of at home. You have more people who may be disenfranchised by quote unquote the system, and they may have an axe to grind. So one of their challenges is, let me go on the dark web today, see if I can hack into a system. Sometimes they're even paid by someone they don't even know, whose identity is disguised to hack into a system. So that, again, those are the 3 types of threats in terms of groupings that we see, not just in global financial services, but all sectors. So the tone from the top is really essential. Whether you're the president or CEO of your company, or you're a larger company with a board, the tone for cybersecurity preparedness has to be set by the top. So what that means is that your board and or your C-level executives really need to be trained in cybersecurity. People roll their eyes, they think it's boring, it's very techy, but actually once you start delving into the risks and you understand why it's so important to protect your data, and what the repercussions are if you don't protect your data and you don't implement training, then it takes on a new life. So again, it's a very interesting area, i.e. the training component and the board preparedness. So what this means is that it's essential that cybersecurity be part of the risk management protocol, strategy, policies, procedures, and vendor management of your company. Also, you have the right as the CEO of your company to demand information and ask questions, whether it's to the vendor who's providing your cybersecurity and data protection, or even a new vendor that you are assessing as part of your due diligence. Thirdly, securing third-party evaluations is really important. So for example, University in Utica, which is State University in Utica, they are one of the best universities, I believe, across the country, as well as MIT and others. But here in New York, really the Utica program, because they have such a sophisticated undergraduate and graduate program. For example, mid and senior level officials at major banks attend their cybersecurity program to attain certification. So if you want to go, for example, to get training for your board, there are various places you can go. You can go to your respective industry association. So for example, if you're a bank, you can go to the ABA and they may have experts for you. You can go to SCORE. SCORE is a nonprofit where they have experts with deep and many years of expertise in cybersecurity and technology to provide free counseling. Again, I'm not endorsing any of these organizations. I'm just letting you know how to get to that level so that you're satisfied with your board preparedness. And then last but not least, there are independent consultants who will help your board prepare by providing training, testing, and then roll out an entire program of cybersecurity to your entire organization. So let's kind of look at the 4 fundamental best practices. And if you have your screen here on the right in a vertical, you can just sort of move that over so you can see it. So identifying the patterns is really important. Educating all your users, and that means your employers, but also your consultants. You may use ADP for your payroll. You may use a law firm like Jennifer's case, and it's important to have the conversation about cybersecurity preparedness. So for example, when you send your documents to an accounting firm, when you upload your payroll data, which includes highly confidential private information such as social security numbers, you have to ensure that your vendors across the board are protecting your data. And then one very important aspect, the third component, is patching the holes. So that means that if you're dealing with Microsoft or you're dealing with your Verizon vendor, always make sure and have that conversation. Ask them, are you patching the holes? When there's a problem that arises and one of your employees tells you, listen, Susan, I was on the phone for 4 hours today with IT support and I keep on getting this problem. You have to have someone on your IT staff who's well-versed in cybersecurity to have the conversation with the vendor about why that problem cannot be resolved, and perhaps it's a recurring problem. So you want to make sure that your vendors of software are patching the holes. Lastly, you want to constantly be checking your controls. And this means that you have to hire the proper cybersecurity employees, consultants, or vendors to ensure that your cybersecurity controls are working effectively, that you have a QA, quality analysis, that you have a all of the quality controls. Again, that's a very important issue. So for example, you've heard of 4 eyes. You may have your IT analyst looking at controls, ensuring that everyone has completed cybersecurity training on time, but then you need another person, in effect, your sort of pseudo internal audit, right? Your additional 2 eyes for a complete 4-eye process to make sure that your first line of defense, that is your board and all of the people at the senior management, your second line of defense, the people who translate those policies into the actual practical day-to-day. And again, your third line of defense, your internal audit. Whether you have internal audit or you have someone you've outsourced that to, you need those 3 levels of defense for cybersecurity. So next, I'm going to speak a little bit about various regulations, and this is really where I often see people falling asleep, not just technology, but then we add the regulations on top of it. But no, it's really cutting edge and it's very important. So you probably heard GDPR. Can I see a show of hands who has heard of GDPR? Okay, so those of you in compliance, law, financial services likely have heard this. This came out of the European Union and requires businesses to protect the personal data. So if you have, for example, a citizen of the EU working for you in upstate New York, that person actually has the right to tell you that they want to basically opt out. They can say, I don't want my personal information included. There are all these protocols that are part of GDPR. And this has been in effect for quite some time, since 2016. So we're well into GDPR. Next, we come into a very important regulation for us here in New York State that impacts every regulated entity of the New York State Department of Financial Services. So this includes banks, insurance companies, and also any cryptocurrency companies like Bitcoin, or Coinbase is actually a good example, Coinbase. So this is a supervisory regime similar to GDPR, but very specific to those entities licensed in the state of New York that address IT systems, data protection, encryption, access controls. Remember, I just talked about IAM, that's access controls, and then penetration testing. Penetration testing means that you have either someone on the inside and or consultants on the outside to constantly test the strength, or what we call the resilience, of your IT systems. Are they able to get into the system? Are they able to go into databases? Can they use a mobile device and go in through another, what they call backdoor? Can they enter your databases and systems through using other methods? Even like a website, even an ad on a website can be used and have malware that can then access your internal data. So again, you need those people to do constant penetration testing. Again, it's threat and awareness, and it's resilience preparedness. Finally, the state of California enacted what's called CCPA. And this is specific to California, but more states are taking on what we call state level cybersecurity regulatory regimes. And it's very important if you're running a business and you're operating in those states, that you understand and adhere to the respective state regulations. Finally, FIDO, which is for the Fast Identity Online, is an industry regime and protocol, basically a new technology that's being expanded across the banks. It's basically two-factor authentication. So for example, if you're on LinkedIn and you go to your privacy settings, you have the capability to add a two-factor authentication. That means you enter your password, and then it may send a code, for example, to your email or to your text message to your cell phone. And make sure your cell phone's always updated on those sites so that you have enhanced authentication for identity. That's really important. And then finally, governments all around the globe are sharing best practices, not just here in the US, but in the UK, in Singapore, all around the globe, to ensure that the systems and protocols are consistent, and that the data is going across, not only going across the border, but also being stopped when a certain country has data privacy. For example, Switzerland has very strict protocols, Singapore, Taiwan, and other countries. Here are, it looks like gobbledygook, but these are basically NIST cybersecurity frameworks, standards we use in the cybersecurity industry. These are all ISO protocols that anyone who's in the cybersecurity space should be familiar with. These establish the standards and also the best practices and minimum standards for implementation. There is a very large contingent of US Department of Defense, specifically Navy, and others who have helped to develop these protocols at the federal level that we then use in the banking industry, insurance industry, and then slowly kind of trickle their way down to small and medium-sized businesses. So again, if you're a small business and you want to use IBM, and I would say it's quite expensive, the average small business in the US spends about 7 to 10% of their total IT budget on cybersecurity, but it really should be a higher percentage. And it's about $3,000 per month for a company with 40 employees or less. So $3,000 a month is you know, could be quite onerous or burdensome for someone who owns a small business who's just now emerging from COVID and rebuilding, you know, their revenues, and to step back and say, I have to spend this much money on cybersecurity preparedness. But again, as I mentioned before, you can avail yourself of SCORE and other free resources to kind of fill in those gaps until you're at the cash flow point for your business that you can afford, you know, to pay a regular $3,000 plus, you know, vendor. Again, I'm just using a quote that I got in my research. It doesn't apply to every company with 40 or less. Sometimes people are able to hire a part-time outsourced, what's called CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, you know, at a lower price point than that, or again, assign or delegate the threat testing and the training to different vendors so that you come in under, you know, you can come in under $36,000 per year on an annual spend. But I'm happy to answer any questions that people have, again, about keeping your business secure. And then also thinking about your home office. Are you using Verizon Fios? Are you on Optimum? Are you calling your provider and switching from sort of a family household set of protocols to Office? You can call and ask, how much would it cost me, instead of having a regular Verizon Fios, to upgrade to small company, because again, you're running your business from your home. And with that small company service, you may have better security protections. You may have more services available to you as a small business or medium business being run out of your home. And most people don't even know this when I mention it. They're not even aware that their Wi-Fi and their internet vendor provides various levels of packages. So again, it's worth asking those questions. And if you're unsure or nervous about having the conversation, you know, bring in someone who is well-versed, or come up with a list of questions in advance. And really don't stop until you have the answers you need, because again, it's about the protection of your people, your data, and your physical assets. one thing to keep in mind is we talk about physical security and cybersecurity or data security. Now with so many people having Nest security and buildings and room surveillance, that video and data security ties into your physical security. So now we look at it really as a 360-degree security threat analysis. So if your connection goes down to your outside cameras and you can't get in touch with your vendor for giving you the video surveillance, you know, that's something obviously you want to ensure that is prevented by having, you know, a backup. And then how do you do that? You ask your vendor, you know, do you have a backup system that kicks in, you know, if my electricity goes down, what is the backup? What happens if I can't access my data and I receive a message of a malware, a threat where they want me to pay $50,000 into an account to get my data? Who do I call? Do I call my local police, my detectives? Do I call my vendor? Who do I call if I have that type of threat? And this is real. You probably heard recently about the threat that was made, and the company did pay a massive amount of money. These are usually, as I mentioned before, the individuals working from overseas that then say, please, you know, wire, you know, not please, they certainly don't say please. They say you must wire the money to this account. And sometimes it's a cryptocurrency account, and it's very difficult for detectives and law enforcement to trace those accounts. And then hold the people responsible, extradite them to the United States, prosecute them by the Department of Justice, because it's a federal felony to seize data, to hack a computer system, to seize data from a bank, insurance company, and even a small business, because that data is being transferred in many cases across country borders, even if it's transferred from, say, New York State to California. The prosecutors now are very well trained in cybersecurity laws, and they do go after the cyber criminals. So thank you very much for your time. And again, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. I appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions for her? Okay, well, I have a question, Dorothy. I know that some people that are on this call or that are going to be watching this call do a lot of their business on social media. Are there specific cybersecurity considerations that businesses should take into consideration when operating on social media?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, you want to make sure that your data is protected. So let's say that you have a business account on Facebook and you're using Facebook to garner new customers and cross-sell, et cetera. Facebook has, you know, very large business support team. And so you can have that conversation with your Facebook sales rep. Another good example is LinkedIn. You have to be very careful, you know, not to accept requests from people you don't know. You have to be very careful not to click on links in your email. Now, this goes back to the training. So part of your employee and consultant preparedness is to conduct periodic cybersecurity training. And that would include a component of the risks of doing business using social media platforms and channels. But also, it's very important to run an ad hoc, what's called an ad hoc campaign, to test the knowledge and preparedness of your employees and consultants. I'll give you an example. On February 14th in the morning, when I logged on to work at my client, I saw an email saying, UPS alert, flowers have been delivered. And I thought, well, that's really nice. Someone sent me flowers. But I knew, so because I'm in cybersecurity, I knew, oh, this is like the perfect attempt to get people to click on the link. Well, I knew that, first of all, working remotely, I'm not even in my office. So there would be no alert downstairs at my security desk that flowers had been delivered. But to get people to train their eye and go to the email immediately and say, oh, wait, there's no HTTPS for secure HTTP, or it doesn't say flowers.com, 800flowers.com. It says 1-800flowers.de, which is Deutschland or Germany for the ending website. All of these examples is simply comes down to training. In terms of other social media platforms that are used like Twitter, I'm not as well versed in Twitter, but again, it comes down to one, asking your social media rep what type of cybersecurity training you can give your employees. B, combining that with your external, internal individual who's cybersecurity trained to ensure that people are not putting the company's assets and employees' data at risk. And then third, conducting periodic testing, again, to make sure that people are truly adhering to your cybersecurity policies, procedures, and controls.
Any other questions? Okay, so I am going to, thank you so much, Dorothy. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. Austin, are you on?
Yes, I am.
I can hear you when Austin's like on the other side of the wall from me right now. I just heard him echo over there. Unfortunately, we only have about 5 minutes, so I don't want to rush through your presentation. I would much rather have you on in June. But stay tuned, please. And Austin, please mark your calendar, by the way, for June 24th. So we can talk about corporate structure. It is certainly a critical piece that you need to keep in mind to protect your businesses. And we could cover it in 5 minutes, but it just would not be sufficient. So,
Well, in case anyone has a
Thank you much for your
corporate
time,
crisis, the
Austin.
answer is likely an LLC is the right entity, but we will talk more about this.
great. And in the meantime, if you want to form an LLC, contact Austin, contact myself, and we will take it away from you. Okay. Of course, Austin, I had to make enough time so we could raffle off some wine because that's just what we do here. So one of my friends over at Scout and Cellar, she came up with the idea to create a clean crafted wine business. She was a lawyer, or she used to be a lawyer and now is a wine connoisseur and makes clean crafted wine. And so I am raffling off clean crafted wine for everybody. Well, not for everybody, just for a couple of people. So I actually already pre-picked the names this time. And Lauren Getz, is that how you pronounce your last name? Lauren, I know you were on, I saw you. Well, she won, and then also Amanda Dreyer, you won another bottle of wine as well. So congratulations to you both, and thank you so much for participating. And what's up next? So aside from Austin joining us in June, we have Jeff Garcia, who was supposed to be on this time, but we moved it to June because we want to make sure we dedicate enough time. Jeff Garcia, who's on the call right now, Vice President of Investments over at Great Point Capital. He's going to be talking to us about sensible investing. And we're going to be discussing protecting your wealth through estate planning as well. So I will have Dolly Donnelly who's a partner in our Trust and Estates department here at Boylan Code. She's going to be talking about different estate planning options, specifically keeping in mind for women business owners and women entrepreneurs. So thinking about balancing your wealth from your business and your life, what that may look like from an estate planning standpoint. And of course, we'll have Austin on to discuss the corporate structure. Follow along on Instagram and Facebook and message me on LinkedIn. Please share this with your friends. I know the summer is going to be a little bit tricky. I would like to get this into an in-person event next month, if not the month after. So, hopefully we can do that. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I look forward to seeing you next month. Enjoy your weekends.
Thank you, Jen. You too.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Thanks, Jen. Take care.
Bye.